Right. Right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. And welcome to Prairie. Welcome to Prairie Postgres. It's everybody here. Okay, thank you for perfect attendance. I am very glad to see everybody. So that's our first, not first, our second meetup in this new location, which I love and I hope will love as well. So for those who do not know me, because of several people who you are, that's me. My name is Hetty, and that's all you need to know because it's only one Hetty in Postgres. So no matter where I work and what I'm doing, there will be, I think there will be one Hetty in Postgres. But anyway, I am a database architect at DRW Holdings. That's my day job. Also, I am a founder and president of Prairie Postgres nonprofit organization, which supports Postgres education in Midwest states of the United States, and the organization which hosts these meetups and PG data conferences. Also, I am a member of the board of directors of Linux Professional Institute, because that's another organization which supports open source and education in the open source, and I think it's important. And also, I am the ACM Chicago chapter communication chair, because I think that building the relationship with academia is also important. Yes, and I'm also like mother, grandmother, as you could see, and many other things. And also, I'm an organizer of PG Data conferences. So now we're looking at PG Data 2027. All right, why are not, okay, why we're not working? Okay, okay, cool. All right, so we are hosted by Chicago Innovation Center, and we are very, very, very thankful for them hosting us. And it's our new home, and we hope that it will be our home for observable future. So in case you haven't seen the Wi-Fi and password, it's here. And you would not need to ask me for new password anymore, because it will be always the same. So once you are here, you always be connected to this network. So Chicago Innovation, so several people ask me what's up, what they're doing. They are absolutely cool organization. And in addition to actually doing actual co-working, they host lots of nonprofit, lots of technical meetups, because they are committed to building Chicago tech community, which we are all part of, right? So that's a message from our host. I have this slide from them. So basically, they're just saying that that's membership club, and there is a way to join the club. I will show this QR code on the next slide. So if you are interested to be more involved, it will be QR code is next. So, oops. So that's QR code to be involved with Chicago Innovations. Okay. All right. So now here we are, Prairie. Again, same slide I'm showing every time. I updated the code for Discord because you are right, it was not valid anymore. This QR code is valid. So if you are not on our Discord, please join, because I want to discuss it. You know, if we have something to discuss, I do not want to send messages through meetup.com. I want you to come and join and just, you know, chime in. And I want to be able to make quick announcements. And I want to discuss things with you, like whom we want to invite, what we want to talk about. Are there any specific topics you want us to cover? You know, there were several discussions of what kind of talks we should have, because I continuously receive requests, can we do some learning? So shall we do some online classes, whatever? Just come to Discord, talk, let's discuss, let's just, you know, let's find out what we want. Please. Also, this today's meetup is called Proudly Sourced in Midwest. There will be local Midwest talks. And please, if you have something to share, tell me, come and join. Because you know what's the coolest thing about Postgres? Like any open source, but I think Postgres specifically. if you are doing something with Postgres, I bet you are doing something nobody else is doing. Like honestly, whatever you are doing something new, something unique, something nobody have done before. So here, the stage is not only for major contributors. We will have Devrim in September, but it's not only for big speakers. It's for you. You are doing something, come and share. We would love to hear this because definitely you did something cool. So please let me know if you want to speak. Okay. So events in the Postgres world since we met last time, because last time we met in May, we had like Snowflake presentation. So between May and now, there were two big events. One was our PG Data, and some of you been there. So thank you everybody who joined us there. That was super amazing event. I don't know how you feel. I am like so excited. I'm so happy with how it went and with turnaround. And I think everybody were very engaged, very interested. So I hope we will continue. Also, there was PG Day Boston, which is kind of our friendly conference. So they were doing PG Day for the first time. And I went there. I had one day trip to Boston is brutal, by the way. You know, it's like getting up at 3:30 a.m. and coming back at 11 p.m. But I did it because I wanted to support them. It was fun. They had Mike Stonebreaker as a keynote speaker. I first time saw Mike Stonebreaker in real life, you know, not on the screen. And there was Basset conference. I do not know whether anybody joined. Next year, I will make announcement again ahead of time. It's very good online conference. So check them out. You know, if you haven't been listening to them, they have all the talks recorded. And honestly, they have lots of very good, interesting things. So check them out. All right. So what is coming next? We won't be here there probably, but upcoming events is open source conference in Vancouver, which I'm not there this year. PostgreSQL Summit US, that's supposed to be largest Postgres conference in the United States. It will be in New York in September 30th to October 2nd. Again, I won't be there, but there will be lots of cool people presenting. And then there will be PGConf, it's not PGConf Dev, what did I put? That's my typo, sorry, it's PGConf for you. Sorry, I will correct my slide for next time. It's a PGCon for you. It will be in Valencia, Spain, and I will be there. And I will be doing 4 events there. It's wild, yes. I will have a security talk. I will be a part of the panel DBA Confessions, and I will be doing 2 community events for Postgres training materials and for community summit. So I will be super busy all 4 days. Yep. So again, we need you. If you are not part of Prairie Postgres, please consider joining. If you are not a voting member yet, there's a QR code. You can join. It's free. So you will receive our newsletter. And as I always saying, you have maybe once in a lifetime opportunity to tell me what to do. Because anybody who works with me can tell it's not easy to tell me what to do, but that's an opportunity. Because this organization is run by the board, not by Hetty. People think otherwise, but honestly, it's run by the board. So all decisions are made in consensus. And you can also volunteer with us because, you know, I mean, I'm super happy, super thankful for everyone who helped me here, who helped us to run these meetups. And we can always use more people. So come and join. We will have next PG Data. So if you like PG Data, next conference is already in the in the plans. So it will be June 11th, 12th, 2027, and we're moving from Loyola to UIC Student Center, which I'm also super happy about because it's public university, it's big space, it's way more suited for the conference than Loyola. We will have more rooms, more opportunities, and we will be able to do more things. One thing I wanted to note, this year, actually, it came as a surprise for me, but I heard from many people, or you know what, if your conference would not be on the weekdays, I would come, because somehow these days, many employers, many managers do not want people to go to the conferences, which I find absurd, but since that's the fact of life, so we thought about this, and this conference will be Friday, Saturday. So we hope that it will actually allow more people to participate, more people to do training, more people to do labs, and we will see where it will go from there, you know? I mean, whether we can spread it more, maybe for Sunday, I don't know. We'll find out. But you can mark your calendars right now. Call for papers will be open at the end of the year, probably. I think in November actually. Call for submissions. So have it in your plans for next year. Okay. Now, our meetups. So what we did so far? We had Ryan Booth in January. We had Sean Thomas in February. We had Paul in March. It was super cool presentation. We had Developers Summit in April, where we talked about all aspects of developing application with Postgres. And then in May, we had Snowflake, and Elizabeth Christensen talked about data warehousing, and I also pitched in with my there is no such a thing as data warehouse anymore. The world is hybrid. So that's, I think, very good event also. And now, what will be coming up next? So next, we will have a meetup on August 26th. And since we voted to adjust meetup to Django, yes, that's what we're doing. So we hope to cover some topics which will be interesting not only for us, but for Django community. Hello, Kanya. So again, ideas are welcome. It's not announced yet, but I hope we can announce it like within the next week and a half. Then after that, we actually have some other things, but details will come later. So today, the topic of our meetup is proudly sourced at Midwest, because first of all, we are trying to do 2 talks. We'll see how it goes. All other meetups are doing more than 1 talk. So I've been doing 1 talks all the time. So let's see whether we will be able to have interesting 2 talks and 1 meetup. So Zach will present declarative schema management. So that's Chicago talk. And Anna will present Postgres Quick Start, and that's Milwaukee talk. So part of Midwest is presented here. So before I give floor for our speakers, again, I want to thank everybody for your support, for being a part of Prairie Postgres. We're here because you are here. If you won't be coming, we won't be running it. It's done for you. And I'm very, very, very thankful for everybody's support and involvement. Especially now, it's our place. We have welcoming hosts, but just, we are responsible for being good guests, leaving the place clean, putting away trash. As you know, again, I'm very, very thankful for Chicago Innovations. So yeah, that's all I had to say. And now, okay, Zach, you are first. Now I am stopping sharing. And now you are ready to share?
Yeah, go share my.
Mhm.
I think that's it. Can everyone see my terminal?
And your audio is low.
Oh, I don't think my audio is on. Go tweak that real quick. All right, does that work better?
Yeah.
All right, cool, awesome.
That was me. I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, so thanks everyone for coming. So this presentation is going to be using a tool called Present Term.
So bear with me if we have our presentation not work super well, but if not, thank you for coming to Declarative Schema Management with PG Schema, where we're going to be talking about writing SQL and not just migrations. So I think lots of us who have used any kind of database, relational database, anything with SQL really, any sort of declared schema, we've had some situation where, all right, we have something in version control, looks good, go through it, gets checked, and then all of a sudden you deploy it and you immediately start getting alerts. Your Grafana dashboard has something spiking, the proverbial something is hitting the fan and it's not going quite as well as you would hope, right? If it hasn't happened to you yet, best of luck for when it happens, probably later this year. So to pivot a little bit, who am I? Heidi gave a great introduction, but for a little bit more detail and background, my name is Zach Payton. I'm a tech lead at a company called Symmetra. I've worked at startups, tech consulting, as well as multiple kind of large regulated enterprises. And I've seen, throughout all of these, no matter what type of organization you're in, most people are often solving the same sort of problems, whether you're using like Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, or, pick your favorite database, right? Lots of my time has been spent in both OLTP, so, you can think like web backends, but also for analytics and stuff like that, either in Postgres, Snowflake, etc. And yeah, so let's start from the beginning. We had that kind of, stuff hits the fan moment at the beginning, but how does it all start? How does any kind of database project start? You're going to need to throw your schema out somewhere, create some tables. Let's start with simple. Maybe we'll just use the, pSQL command line, right? So we'll type out something in a little file, or maybe we even, use the little terminal down here. I could, create table, something. I'm going to close that, but you're just going to write it in and run it. Cool. I've executed that now. And if we go and run, you can see that it has succeeded there. We now have an orders table with that primary key, right? Awesome, this is good. We just kind of like ran a single command and we don't need to do anything else, right? Unfortunately, things get a little complicated pretty quickly. So we now need to add a new column. Say some business requirement came in, our story was, resolved, and now we have another one thanks to our great product owners. We're just gonna go and set something up. This looks good to me. Maybe, someone else on your team says, oh, Zach, can I go run this? And you're like, yeah, that looks awesome. That's a column that fits the story. Cool. And this would work pretty well. I'd probably say looks good to me, just kind of pass it off. There's some issues though. In dev, this will probably run instantly. Your dev, if you're lucky, will have 200, maybe 2,000 rows, but you may have millions of rows in production. And this, could be a lot more intensive and time consuming than you want. And this is just one type of example. And then you also then need to have this issue, or you run into this issue of what happens to all your, orders and stuff. You need to start tracking these. You need to have this in version control. You may be at a company that says, actually, like, we're not going to give you just access to the production database to go and do your deploy. You have to use a CI/CD pipeline. You have to version control that. We need to audit everything you do. That's a very common thing. So let's go and throw this into a file, right? And we say all right, cool. We wrote it kind of, importantly for that first. So we say all right, already exists, skipping, yada, yada, yada. So now with a file, we can keep stuff in. This is great, right? Because now we can just throw stuff into this file. It'll show up in a pull request and we're good. And then we add an index. So this would have some issues. The top one can lock it so that no one can write to a table until it completes. And so if you have something that takes, 100 milliseconds, It's probably fine. No one will probably notice, maybe. However, if you have millions of rows, sometimes I've seen these take hours, right? So a small little tweak here to say, all right, we're going to create this concurrently. We're going to have it kind of run to the side while the database can kind of churn on its own, and it'll just kind of like swap in when it's ready. Okay, we have fixed this, but that's a little bit to know. Like, there's a lot of other cases here we can also think about that may cause some issues. And if you're trying to bring a junior dev onto your team, or you yourself don't know Postgres that well, there's lots of little things that may happen. Yes, I saw a question.
I was just wondering, it seems like the way that you have the orders, or the order status, you're putting that as a string. Could you just change it to using the order status as a and then do kind of a custom defined type? So
Yeah, you could do something like that. For the illustrative example, that isn't going to massively change the impact of like locking a table or not. But yeah, and we can also talk more for questions at the end. But thank you. So we can see that this would, block every like insert, update, and delete. So we can do something like adding a linter. That way, I don't need to remember all the rules, and my junior devs don't need to remember all the rules, and AI doesn't need to remember all the rules. So we can use something called squawk, and this will do great. This will say, hey, your index here is not really online. You should probably add it if not exists. You should probably say like, hey, do it concurrently, and we can see this actually flows off my page here because it just keeps on going. And this is where I'd like to call it, like, you can write a very efficient like migration manually, but your team's probably going to take like the like visible path, right? And so if there's something that can go wrong, eventually someone's going to trip over it. And then let's say you keep on that file, you make some of that, typing, suggestions that was suggested by the audience, and you start stacking up files that say, all right, we're going to create the orders, we're going to add email or add status correctly, we're going to, oops, do that default, do it again, and you now have a bunch of files you have to worry about, and we have a bunch of other alter statements that keep on adding up. So to understand what's going on, you need to then run all of them and figure out what your state is. So let's go and say we've altered our table, we ran all of our migrations, we've deployed it, we're like, all right, awesome, we deployed on a Friday, it looks great, everything passed review. Does the email column still exist? Let's check. It doesn't. But we defined it, and it ran out of order. We didn't store our files correctly as we were piping them into our CI/CD pipeline. That's a little bit of an issue. No one looked at the other files. We just saw like, okay, there was one, and alphanumeric one wins here. And so this kind of comes into the idea of like your schema, like if you just use this, kind of doesn't really live in any single spot other than the database. So, again, we can go and run a display command, but that's kind of it. So we have lots of options here. You can go and read all your files all the time. You can use either a tool to compact your history of schemas, like, if we have an alter statement from last quarter, do we still need that? Where should we put it? Do we just update the create statement to have all the columns to begin with? What happens with branch conflicts? We could try using another tool, like we could write XML. I don't like writing XML personally, but some people do. Some people like to write Python, other programming languages. These can all be really good solutions. The best one kind of depends on your team, but for me, I want to write SQL and get on with my job. So we could render this, right? We can, PG dump schema only to a file. There's lots of tools out there as well that will also do this for you and like maintain a certain file in your Git repo. But you now have this loop of, All right, you have a new business requirement, figure out what's going on. You have to figure out what your schema should be. You have to write the migration, review it for online safety, apply it, clean up and compact, and then go back. And this is really different. This is not the way lots of other parts of application development go, right? If I'm writing Terraform, I don't care what the current setting is. If I'm writing Python, I don't care what the old version is. I care about what's written in the function right now during my deployment in that version, right? So this is kind of the way I found that lots of devs, especially ones that, SQL is maybe their second or third skill, really kind of expect. So how can we give this to others? The database is stateful, so that's one of the reasons this happens, right? Like unlike a API, you don't really care if your API restarts, or at least you shouldn't if you have like a highly available distributed load balancer or something. So you can just restart it, do a rolling release maybe. There's some fancier ways you can do that, but maybe slightly harder to do in a database, not impossible. But really what we want is this. We want a new business requirement, figure out what your schema should be, and just apply it and move on with your day. And this is the same loop that developers I've found expect and will get very confused when you tell them like, oh, you need to actually read the files to understand the history of the database to figure out how we got to where we are right now. So why don't we just do that? Like, let's just go ahead and just write some DDL and see what happens. So if this demo works, we will see that it will pop up in a second with a tool called PG Schema. If not, I have the next slide as a backup. Do a brief rolling suspense. And there we go. All right. So for anyone who's used to Terraform or CDK or other declarative tooling, you guys may find this, very at home, right? This is really easy. At my day job, we pipe this into our kind of GitHub Action style of setup, and we can just review this as part of the whole review workflow. And we're like, easy glance, like, all right, they're going to modify one table, they're going to add an index, cool, good. And if I'm curious, I can even see how PG Schema is breaking this down to different transaction groups so that we can have a single migration step that may require multiple transactions to get through. And sometimes these can get pretty complex if you're doing something more than a really toy example here, right? And this, in case the demo doesn't work, I had a screenshot. And so we've kind of now solved a big part of the problem. Some people in the audience may be like, well, I like having the Python. Like, why would I write raw SQL? And my answer to that is it's portable. It's really easy to throw around. You can swap out your entire, backend, API library. You can have agents understand it very easily. Once you start writing it declaratively, it's super easy to review with Git. And you can just kind of like run through it and do some more advanced features that aren't always supported in custom programming languages or ORMs. So I've kind of already spoiled a little bit. Probably should have reordered my slides. But what we've done here is use PG Schema to turn a big stack of migrations into one declarative setup. We can also do some other things, such as, ordering them. You can use the /i prefix to include them, so you can kind of start having each file not be like a single migration version, but it could be like, okay, this is where the migration, the state for like this schema lives, this table lives, et cetera, et cetera. Some caveats is it only does schema level objects. It does not handle database level objects. So you have to declare your roles outside of PG Schema. We'll get into a little bit of that later. But you can kind of migrate a project pretty easily. You can dump to a SQL file, then you can edit it up, chop it up to just what you want, the current state, review it with a plan, and then you can apply. You can also do it in one shot if you want, but either way kind of works. And you, again, get a little plan, transaction groups. Now, there are a few book guns. renames don't work right now. So we have tried to make it very simple. And so what that means is it'll look at your, setup and be like, well, that column doesn't exist. Let me delete it. So that's one big caveat. Now, we try to do only backwards compatible migration. So this normally isn't an issue in production, but it is something to be warned about. And then we've also gotten really comfortable and confident in its abilities. And sometimes it's bitten us in the past where we've thrown an index through, not realized the cost of it, and had it, churn a little bit longer than I thought, but it was online, so no outage, right? Just a little bit of a larger AWS bill than I thought. There's, it's not a one size, it's a silver bullet, right? I still have our devs adding indexes where they literally are not used by the planner. And, I kind of already spoke about those other points there. Also, it is pretty great to use with AI. It doesn't need a nudge. I'll just add this to my Claude MD, being saying something like, all right, we use declarative schema, just write what you want the table to be. Here's like the Git link to look up more details if you want, have fun. That's kind of it. So what we've kind of figured out here is declarative does not mean you don't need to think about what your schema should be. It does not mean that you don't need to learn Postgres, but it does, in my experience, really help with the maintainability of your system. It helps new devs on your project go from reading documentation to making a PR to contribute to your project much quicker. And those hard parts, you can spend more time thinking about them. And that's most of it. Still a green project. There's been some small hiccups, but overall, we're pretty happy with it. It's an open source project. You look it up on GitHub. And yeah, it makes things sometimes feel a little too easy, but that's kind of the point. And that's all for my presentation. Are there any quick questions? I don't know how we're doing on time, but yeah. Sure. I think they recently changed the name, but if you just Google PG Schema, it should show up. I think they're going under the name PG Plex now. Yeah. I saw one over here. Yeah.
Yeah. Does the tool provide any ability for you to specify the logic in the migration if that is important and it can't possibly infer it? Like you need to populate a column based on.
Yeah. So what you can do is much in the way that like some other things will have like a plan file. You can actually have it output a plan file that is basically JSON with embedded SQL strings in it. And you can then add stuff there. So there are alternative Git workflows that you can sort out that allow you to then update it. Now, what we do is we usually in our CI/CD app, we literally will just have a pre-SQL and a post-SQL. So if we do need a rare one-off migration, this happens maybe once a month where we're like, all right, we actually need to custom write a migration for this one. We can just drop it in and it will just run as like the prior task in our CI/CD, run the main migration and then, resolve itself. Which has been the easiest for us. But there's lots of ways you can solve it. There's some GitHub issues also open up on discussions on improving this feature. So yeah. All right. Anything else?
So if I understood, this is my first introduction to PG schema. It sounds like there are two things that you were saying. It's like one is just basically just like a reviewer to make sure you don't do anything stupid. And then the second one, I didn't quite understand, was grouping the transactions together.
Right. Yeah. So let's imagine a scenario where you had a before of you had like one table, and then you wanted to then go and create like a view, and then you wanted to go create like say like something else that relied, like an index on top of that, view or another table, but you wanted to do that in like a online way, like concurrently, that means that that table would need to exist outside of the transaction, if I'm recalling correctly. And so in order to get your final result, it's necessary to break that down across multiple transactions. Postgres is really great with its transactional like DDL, but there are some edge cases where you do need to go across the transaction boundary.
No, I mean, yeah, DDL is tricky like this, actually. It's transactional, but it's not MVCC. So that's the problem.
Yes.
And that's why you can run in very interesting things. Like,
Yes,
let's start and stop there.
Yes, we could have an entire presentation on just migrations, transactions.
Yeah, yeah. That's the tricky part because it's very misleading with Postgres when you first exposed to, DDL is transactional. Woo, so cool. But then it's like, yes, but no.
Yeah. Like often would
No,
be the
it's like
answer,
literally it's not on BCC because actually you can see what's going inside transaction before transaction is committed. Because if you are trying to execute conflicting details, so technically if it's in transaction, it's atomic and the intermediate status is not visible to any other transactions, but it is visible. So,
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, in that case,
In your CI/CD pipelines, as you're deploying this to the next environment, how are you passing your passwords?
Yeah, so we use like the kind of library setup. So you can either use like I forget exactly the word for it in GitHub, but in Azure, I think it's something like that. And yeah.
Simple way of putting a secret.
Oh,
Yeah,
like through Eva or something.
yeah. So you can literally read those Enva secrets from the CI/CD.
At runtime.
And for this presentation, I just use local things. So I use another tool called Mise en Place to basically just like put them here. And you can do things like, like instead of having it hard coded for a password in plain text, don't do that. But you can have it, reach out to other utilities or stuff like that. So there's lots of ways you can do it. And we can talk, after if you're curious about, how to set something like that up. I think there's even a GitHub Actions like pre-made tool for PG schema. Don't quote me on that one though. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Any last questions before I step down? All right, awesome. Thank you folks so much. I appreciate it.
all right. All right, do we need like 5 minutes break? Like get more water, get more pizza before we start the next one? Let's do 5 minutes, okay? Okay. And also, I think actually because people online saying they have echo, so I think what we did last time, I cannot turn it off because I'm recording. So probably actually we need to turn it to it. So it's echoing. Yeah.
Right.
And I think I had a phone because recording from my computer. So I think that was the phone that we turn to my computer. So yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
I mean, we can, let's start like this, if you will be not here, I can turn it.
That's, yeah.
I thought I was in the webinar, but I'm not.
Okay.
How am I
Yeah,
not in the
there.
webinar? Yes. Technical issues.
Oh. What was your question?
Oh, you having technical issues?
I'm not.
Oh, jeez.
Right. If you're having connection.
I just-
Tether off my phone.
Yeah, I can tether off of mine too. I just like, I'm just trying to get back into the Zoom. Like, oh, here we go. It was just like spinning forever trying to move the image. There we go. I think we're okay. Should be. Just like, it's gonna take forever. Okay. This is fine. No video, no audio.
I think if you can, I'm gonna,
I'm good.
I'm gonna mute. If you turn your audio on,
My audio is on.
yeah, if you turn your microphone on rather, that way we'll be able to hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, that works. Okay. Yeah, good. Can you hear me now? Check, check. Beautiful. All right. Here we go. When it's time for my young children to make a transition, I always give them a 5-minute warning. And the trick is children have no idea how long 5 minutes is. You just have to, so that's similarly our 5-minute break. So welcome back, everyone. It's actually 5. I apologize for impugning your integrity on the 5-minute break. In any case, we're here. My name's Anna Bailikova. I'm here to talk to you about getting started with PostGIS. There we go. Who am I? I'm currently a staff data engineer at Geomatrix. Previously, I did geospatial data engineering at Mapbox and Urban Footprint. I'm also a co-founder and a board member at Prairie Postgres. We'd love, as you heard previously, we would love for you to get involved. And when I was a child, I really loved the National Geographic map inserts. That was like the highlight of my month when you get the new National Geographic and it'd have the folded up map in the middle. I see nods. Yeah, it was great. And I'm also a year-round bike commuter in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So today we're going to take a look at some data relating to some bike rides we've taken in Milwaukee. Oh, hello. Okay. My intended audience for this talk is folks who are using Postgres. You might be vaguely aware that Postgres can do almost anything you ask it to, but you haven't yet used it for GIS, and you're not sure where to start. And the tutorials kind of feel like this image, you know, first draw some circles, then draw the rest of the dang owl. Or maybe you have kind of a sense of the kind of questions that you'd like to answer with GIS, but you're not even really sure what pencils you should be using or what kind of paper. So we are not going to do anything fancy today, but I'd like to give you a path to starting with GIS with Postgres, using mostly just Postgres. So you can take it and run. So questions that I've had about my bike rides. So like any good data person, if it's not in the database, it didn't happen. So I recalled all of my bike rides. And sometimes I wonder things like, what neighborhoods did I travel through? And what neighborhoods I visited the most frequently? And maybe what percentage of each falls within each neighborhood? These are kind of going to be our animating questions that we look at this. I initially prepared this presentation using my own data from Strava, but then I realized I would need to provide that data publicly and decided not to give up quite so much public information about where I live and where all my friends and loved ones live in Milwaukee. So we're going to be looking at bike data from Milwaukee's monthly critical mass ride. And I'll send out a GitHub repo after the meetup that'll include all the data that we use in this presentation and startup scripts so that you can run this locally. So our prereqs are going to be pretty minimal. We're going to be using Postgres, obviously. We're going to use QGIS as a visualization layer. You can use absolutely any visualization layer that you want. I'm suggesting QGIS so that you don't spin your wheels for 10 hours deciding which one to use. They're all great. They all work the same. We're using QGIS here. And then we're also using Ogre to Ogre, which is a awesome open source tool that's very useful for transforming and loading data and comes with native, extremely robust Postgres support. And these are all our dependencies. Here we go. Why do we need QGIS? It's because geospatial data looks like this. If you, it's a whole bunch of coordinates. I know, it's so confusing. So we're going to use QGIS to be able to actually visualize our data. I think with a lot of data, you know, we can be very fancy and live inside the terminal and never, you know, like use a visualization tool as like really proud backend guys. It just doesn't work with geospatial. So unless you want to be reading, you know, the 11th digit of a decimal all the time, this is why we're using QGIS. So some housekeeping before we started. I know nobody in this room would ever just use the public schema for everything, user Postgres, password Postgres. So we're gonna, what? I'm not Zach, I'm Anna. So we're gonna create a database called demo. We'll change that database. We're gonna add the Postgres extension and create a demo schema, and that's where everything's gonna live. And then we're gonna load some track data of bike trips. Thank you. Like I said, I'll provide this in the GitHub repo, but all these are is if you use Strava, you can download your own archive, but all we're going to do with Ogre to Ogre is specify the Postgres database that we're connecting to. In this case, I'm using append. You can also overwrite. I'm using append because this little command lived inside a bash script that looped through all of the files for all the different activities. And then we're going to specify where the data is going to land, which is demo.tracks, and specify that we want the tracks layer out of our files. Then inside of QGIS, it has a handy little connection to connect to a Postgres server. And we'll see that inside our database, we have this tracks layer. Ta-da! Okay, everybody can go home. So what do we see? Now, this is pretty cool if you're like designing a t-shirt or a hat and you want somebody to ask you what that random shape is, but it's not really telling us anything yet besides that we went on some bike rides. So contextual data is really important. One way to do that is to visualize something on a base map. The easiest way to do this, if QGIS, is just load up any old tile server. I'm using OpenStreetMap because we love open source software and data here. And now we can load a base map and we can see, oh, hey, those lines actually do correspond to physical locations in the beautiful city of Milwaukee. Cool, okay, now we've made like a kind of ugly map with our data, but we're gonna be here a long time if I'm just gonna stare at this map and try to read the labels on the tile set to figure out what neighborhoods we've been in. So we have now added some line data to our database. We're gonna add some polygons next. So we're gonna grab a GeoJSON file, upload it to our database of all the neighborhood boundaries of Milwaukee. Same as before. In this case, we're overwriting because we have one neighborhood file and we don't want a lot of duplicates. Here we go. I'm including this in the slides, but I'm going to skip it. We do have to make sure the data is typed correctly, and after the import, you might need to clean it up. All right, now we have a nice map of Milwaukee with delineations that we're excited about and are interesting to us, or not interesting at all if you don't know anything about the city of Milwaukee. And we can overlay our previously loaded bike data. Now we're getting somewhere. So we're seeing multiple data sources together, and we can start asking questions of our data. Now, the main thing I want everyone to take away from this talk is that PostGIS is just Postgres. You don't have to learn Python, you don't have to learn R. We can use SQL that we're already used to, whether it's inside your wherever you want to define your SQL, whether it's inside QGIS or if you're doing it from the command line, we can do kind of standard looking SQL to answer geographic questions. So in this case, if I want to know which neighborhoods critical mass has visited, I can look for neighborhoods from our neighborhoods table, join it to the tracks, which define the rides, and we just intersect the two on their two geometry columns. Yeah, it's not scary, right? So now we have a list of neighborhoods, which is great. Let's see it on a map though, right? That's what we're here for. It would be way more boring if National Geographic just sent you a piece of, like a list of places instead of a map. Here we go. Okay, so now we can include the geometry. There's actually some generated SQL in the screenshot, which is what QGIS does just to make sure that you always have a unique ID if you don't provide one. And we're gonna include the geometry. Now we can put it on a map. Oh, two colors, starting to get somewhere, right? So now we've related our two data sets. So what that means is any attributes that we have about our polygons, any characteristics of the neighborhood, population, built environment, we can relate back to the line level data. So if we go back to one of our motivating questions, if we wanted to see which neighborhoods we spend the most time in, we can sort of see the squiggles, but we don't know how they overlap, how many times they've been visited. We don't, we're not going to get out there with a ruler. So instead, we're going to just write some SQL based on our same join. So in this case, we have the same join. We're intersecting our tracks and our neighborhoods on their broad geometry. And then we're taking those intersections. So here's a pop quiz. If you intersect a line with a polygon, what kind of shape do you end up with?
You mean like the intersection?
Yeah, the intersection of those two things.
Multiple points?
A line or possibly a multi-line. But it is something that has a computable length, right? So in order to figure out how far we actually traveled in this intersection, we take the same intersection calculation, we sum the length of those intersections, we divide by the number of meters to get into imperial units, sorry about that, and now we have a metric of total miles. And what this means is, when we create a new layer, we can actually see a heat map of where our rides have taken us and what neighborhoods we're spending the most time in, which ones we haven't visited at all. So all of this is very simple, right, these calculations, but what it's meant to show you is that once you have your data in Postgres, and once you figure out how to relate your geometries to each other, the rest of it is the same SQL that you write in any other context. And it's extremely powerful. So what's going to go wrong? Now that I've given you enough information to be dangerous, you do still have to understand your data types. So geospatial data can come in a lot of different formats. PostGIS works best with geometries, but it also supports string and byte representations. But you cannot intersect a byte array geospatially. So when you're doing a geospatial operation, you're going to try to do something and it's going to throw a cryptic error. Check what the type is. Are you actually working with geometries, or are you working with a string that just looks a lot like a geometry when it's printed out in the terminal? You also need to understand your projection and your coordinate system. The Earth is not flat, but neither is it a sphere. So we have a lot of different ways to represent the shape of the Earth. That's going to impact your data. Almost all the data you find online is going to use this one standard, but that's not always the case. So always check. PostGIS will sometimes yell at you and warn you when you try to compare apples to oranges, and sometimes it will just happily do extremely computationally intensive things in the background that may or may not give you the result that you want. And then we do have to understand our set theory a little bit. So what is the intersection of a line and a line? What's the intersection of a point and a line? What about multiple lines and multiple polygons? When you're thinking about how to define your problem, you might need to split up your multi-polygons into individual polygons to make your joints make sense or more performant. And finally, PostGIS cannot understand your data for you. So are your geographies complete? Are they edge matched? When we have that cute little map of neighborhoods, it looks okay. But are there secretly slivers that are missing in between the features? Are there overlaps? All of that is the kind of stuff that we see in other cases that'll cause us to have trouble in our database. So it's essentially like nulls or duplicates, things that are going to match on more than one record because of irregularities in your geometry. Yes, ways to fail. And finally, performance. Just because it's PostGIS, we still have to think about performance. It's a big hobby horse for myself and Hetty, as we all know. So indexing will help. GIST indexes allow result pruning on geospatial attributes, and you can make this explicit, give the optimizer a hint by using a bounding box. So if you define a bounding box, you can pass it directly, and it will prune the data before performing these operations. Not all functions can make use of indices. So similar to like understanding the difference between leading wildcards and trailing wildcards, you'll run into STD within is saying a distance within a certain boundary that will use a index and short circuit. ST distance will evaluate for every single row in your data set. And unfortunately, there's not a great way to find those pitfalls without just finding them. And then finally, I wanted to flag ST-simplify, which is a function that will reduce the number of vertices in your object. If the analysis that you're doing is not fine-grained, or if you're just trying to create a visualization, you might not. You might not need every single detailed vertice of the shapes that you're using. And by making the shapes simpler, you can dramatically reduce the size of your data without having impacts to the end result that you're trying to produce. Something that is maybe counterintuitive is that the size of your row has nothing to do with the size of the geospatial object it represents. It has to do with how finely grained the definition is of the object. So where to go next? There's a link here to an intro to geospatial concepts with PostGIS. Once you're making cool intersections and calculations, you can serve them with a feature server to your web apps or your other client applications. You can create prettier tile maps on that prettier tiles on that OSM map I showed before, all with native Postgres extensions. There's a whole universe of PostGIS-related functionality out there. It's a really robust part of the ecosystem. And questions?
Anything or valuable relevant kind of dealing with it. But could you actually use the kind of the geometry features of Postgres to instead of like dealing with like maps or kind of the geospatial, but just deal with like geometry like that animations or like shape like 3D objects and kind of use
Yeah.
to like a rendering system and kind of use that to
Yeah. I mean, it's the functionality is designed to work with the coordinate system, so you can use it as like a generalization for like a three-dimensional matrix if you wanted to. It might not be the fastest way to do it, but there's nothing stopping you. I guess like there's functions you can use to enforce your geometries being like valid representation of geospatial reality, but you can use arbitrary like XYZ coordinates if you wanted to represent something other than geospatial data.
This is my first foray to Post.js here. Are the geometries, can they think of them kind of like scalable vector graphics? Is that kind
Yeah.
of, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an easy one. You got any more of those? Yeah.
So I know in the next version of Postgres, they're planning on releasing some graphing, like graph capabilities. I'm curious if you know if the PostGIS development team is planning on incorporating any of those as also PostGIS features or not. It's been a long time since I've been in the more PostGIS space.
I don't know what the plan is. It would be awesome. I think I use QGIS because it's free, it's widely available. You can run everything locally, so I think it's a really great tool in that sense, but you get a lot with QGIS that you don't need if all you want to do is see stuff. The other way to do it, if you don't want to touch QGIS, is like if you're a VS Code user, there's a lot of extensions you can use that'll visualize certain kinds of, WKTs or, and any of those, some of them will even like decode WKBs, so well-known binary representations. I find it a little, my personal preference is not to have that inside my code editor, but my personal preference does not have to drive anybody else's choices. It would be sick if it was just part of PostGIS though. PostGIS, I believe, is bundled with the.
It's not default. It's not
not
distributed as default. It's a separate extension. So, and it actually has a little bit of not such a straightforward integration, because the versioning of PostGIS is different from Postgres versioning. So there are extensions which are usually included with core installation, which are in shared libraries, and then you just can create extension and here you go. PostGIS is not one of them. And that's kind of sad. So to your questions, it would be great if it would be, but
lots of managed Postgres offerings have it as a default extension. So if you use I don't know,
Just checking it's available, sure.
It's available. So again, it's a difference standard installation versus
But if you're downloading it from the website or building from source.
Yes.
There's also if you run Postgres, if you run it containerized locally, there's images that come with PostGIS and also come with GDAL, which is the larger family of geospatial tools that Over and Over is part of. There's images you can use that come with it installed. Genuinely, if installation is a barrier to get started, email me, my contact information is available in the Meetup, because it is a pain in the butt, but there is a way. It shouldn't be hard.
No, I think it's important, again, what Anna said and what Zach said, these are the things which are part of Postgres. It's nothing but Postgres. And, Zach, actually, I wanted to comment because you touched very important topic. I have lots of these arguments, conversations, suggestions, why you are doing something with Postgres, especially something which is not really databasey, why you are generating some strings in Postgres, you can do it outside with Python and whatever. So for me, it's same as with PostGIS. It's you have it all encapsulated in your database, and your client can be whatever. So you should not imply that if you have your Postgres, you also have to have Python installed, God forbid, like Perl installed. It's like my big resentment for PG tabs, which I love in general, but why you have to have Perl installation to run Postgres unit tests? Just shoot me, I don't know. So I think again, it's like very important that we can do everything within Postgres, and it's very like important that it's not something like scary, something like graphy. We do not know where it comes from. It all comes from Postgres, and it's like Postgres queries.
Yeah, and I think another benefit, right, of this is that you end up getting this SQL that is, like just like very SQL looking. You can absolutely write this. Oh, sorry.
I'll unmute. You can absolutely write this stuff with Python or R, but a lot of it is going to look procedural. Like you're not going to have, you're going to, there's sometimes it's like, okay, do I need a bigger cluster and more parallelization in my Python script, or should I just write it in Postgres, where it operates on sets and not rows? So I think this is a huge advantage, especially a lot of the geospatial data sets are quite large. They don't fit in memory. That becomes a challenge.
Speaking of doing things with Postgres, you talked about a challenge of like knowing your data, and if the data is like malformed or it doesn't match constraints that you wanted to. Are there any like higher level types or things that Postgres provides that like lets you know that your data is a certain way? I don't know much about the geospatial data set.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to there's geometry and geography types. Geometry types are like just like Cartesian coordinates, and geography includes the like projection information. But in addition to generically like geometry and geography, you have specifically strong typing for points, lines, polygons, and multi-lines and multi-polygons. So you can specify what kind of shapes your shape is allowed to be. And then there's also functionality inside Postgres for validating it. There's certain rules about how the data should be structured, like your vertices should go counterclockwise, and like not having like donuts. If people are into topology, there's like a lot that goes into it, but you don't have to learn it. You can just use Postgres functions to check if the data is valid.
You say multi-line, multi-polygon, is that literally just multiple of the things but kind of
Yes.
switched into one data type?
Yes, one object with multiple lines. One thing you might notice if you're looking at like one of these beautiful maps of Milwaukee is that sometimes your polygon is just like a weird shape and it has little doohickeys hanging off of it, and sometimes it's not contiguous, So like if you have, for example, like a polygon that represents the United States, like there's one polygon for the continental United States, and then more polygons for like Hawaii, and another polygon for Alaska. And so in order to get all of those things in one object, it ends up being a multi-polygon instead of just a singular polygon.
Same as multi-ranges. Okay. More questions? And I think you cut it too much because you're worried that you are like having 60 minutes presentation. I think you cut it to 15 minutes instead of 25. All right, so thank you for both presenters and participants. So what else? So we can stick around. We still have time here. We have space. Maybe we still have some bits I cannot guarantee, but if we have it's all yours. So we don't need to sit here. So things which I kind of like wanted to chat about, I posted survey multiple times. I think there were like 3 people or 5 people responded about what we are doing for the rest of the year. So one meetup already voted for its end of August. And otherwise, we have September 22nd, I think. and we have October for Ruby Postgres, yes, and Anton, yep, and we tentatively have mid-November. So I think because there were no more votes, we will stick with this, but in general, I would love to hear what we want to do, because when we do Ruby Postgres, it's kind of off schedule. So if we want to do something in addition, we can always do this. So I will be out at the end of October because, as I mentioned, I will be a little bit busy doing 4 events and 1 conference. I don't know. So maybe we should be ready at some point to do meetup without me. I know it's outrageous. I know there were no meetups in 10 years and 11 years without me, but you know, maybe. So let's keep talking about this. Please give us feedback, give your ideas. We would love to hear from everyone. And thank you again for coming. Thank you. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.